We are in Chapter 8. This is video number 4, and we're reading from The Manipulated Mind by Denise Wynn. Those cult members who did manage to escape or whose parents retrieved them tended to suffer long-term effects as a result of their indoctrination, Singer said. She mentioned trouble in concentrating, alienation, guilt about sex or guilt about deceptions they had practiced as Moonies, and anger about having been duped. From this picture provided in court by Sanger, it is easy to see the kinds of influence techniques already described in this book being applied wholesale by the Moonies. In Snapping, an analysis of cults and conversion by Flo Conway and Jim Siegelman, many quotations from cult members themselves show those influences at work. For instance, the power of repetitive activity and boredom to induce a trance-like, suggestible state is revealed in the words of Kathy, a young Moonie, who spent 3 hours in continual prayer for the sake of new members. When I stood up, I felt like thin air. I had to brace myself. I felt this energy. It was a kind of ecstasy. It just flowed through me like a sensation of tingling. It sent shocks through me. I equated it with divine love. Lifton has spoken of thought-terminating cliches. Sargent of the Chinese tactic of preventing questioning of communism among the Chinese by fostering the idea that evil thought is as bad as an evil deed. Cults have their own methods to achieve not thinking among cult members. Again, from Snapping, a Divine Light Mission member says the meditation Maharaji was teaching involved intensity, not depth. The intensity was the concentration with which you focused on, say, the sound of your own breathing. It gave me a certain absence of feeling. It eventually reached a point where, when I had doubts, guilt, or other uncomfortable emotions, I would immediately react by meditating. After a while, any significant thought I might have was immediately obliterated by meditating. Other cult members said that, in the same circumstances, they might chant. One graduate, est is the technique for living, developed by Werner Erhard, told the authors of Snapping that, in est, thinking is the enemy because it is the barrier to experience. Thinking, he said, was just old tape recordings going round and round, clogging the essence of pure experience. Jim Jones, leader of the People's Temple, who committed suicide with his members in Guyana at his own command, was reputed to tell his followers that they must never ask why he said something, just do it. Criticizing or questioning him weakened the power of the group. Being forewarned helped 2 Mooney members withstand pressure on their beliefs. See section on commitment in Chapter 6. We had been told a lot of times people will get sucked back into the real world and Satan through their families, and you had to cut the emotional tie and look at your parents objectively. Lawrence's mother got frantic when she realized we were going back. She ran out to the car crying, but we remained very cool and untouched by her. As we drove away, I said, "It must be very hard for you to see your mother like that." And Lawrence said, "That's not my mother. That woman who is crying and carrying on is not my real mother." And I was proud of him then for seeing things the way they were. That's from Snapping. Margaret Hyde, in Brainwashing, quotes an ex-member of the cult Children of God to demonstrate the cult's dependence on fostering the idea of all blame being internal. If one can be convinced that his or her own mind cannot be trusted, and if one can be told often enough that any doubts and longings are the work of the devil, complete alienation from former supportive individuals may be accomplished. Along with the constant propounding of the cult's beliefs, an element of fear is reportedly introduced so that even though the converts are told they are free to leave, few do so. Californian Ted Patrick, who nearly lost his son to the Children of God, is now famous as a deprogrammer, someone who uses intensive tactics to break the hold of a cult on a recruit. He says that the main thrust of deprogramming is forcing people to think, to challenge them to answer questions for which they have not been programmed with an answer. The more frustrated they become because they have been taught there is an answer to all attacks, the more they are forced to open their minds. The point suddenly comes when they can see what has happened to them and their minds start to function for themselves again. Patrick admits to using shock tactics sometimes, such as cutting off a Hare Krishna member's sacred ponytail, but says that most stories of his practices are exaggerated out of all proportion, and that helps. People who are kidnapped from their cult and brought to him are terrified before he even starts on them. Fear of succumbing facilitates succumbing. An ex-evangelical preacher called Marjo Gortner told a salutary tale to the authors of Snapping, which goes far to confirm Zimbardo's statement that an illusion of invulnerability serves only to increase the ease with which one can be controlled. Gortner saw his role as preacher as similar to that of a rock star. He would make a strong entrance, go through the old standard numbers, and build up to his hit song at the end, by which time the audience is in ecstasy. The people who are out there don't see it as entertainment, although that is in fact the way it is. Hey, now that he is no longer a preacher, Gortner spends much time trying to convey to the public the kinds of rhetorical techniques that are so commonly used to manipulate their thoughts and emotions. From Snapping, I lecture in about 20 colleges a year and do a faith healing demonstration, but I always make them ask for it. I tell them that I don't believe in it, that I use a lot of tricks, and the title of the lecture is Rhetoric and Charisma. So I've already given them the whole rap explaining how it's done, but they still want to see it. So I throw it all right back at them. I say, no, you don't really want to see it. And they say, oh yes, we do. And I say, but you don't believe in it anyway, so I can't do it. And they say, we believe. So after about 20 minutes of this, I ask for a volunteer, and I have a girl come up and I say, so you want to feel better? And I say, you're lying to me. You're just up here for a good time, and you want to impress all these people, and you want to make an ass out of me and an ass out of this whole thing. So why don't you go back and sit down? I really get hard on her, and she says, no, I believe. And I keep going back and forth until she's almost in tears. And then, even though this is in a college crowd, I am only doing it as a joke. I just say my same old line. In the name of Jesus, and then touch them on the head, and wham, down they fall, down flat every time. As Hoffer said, people so often ask to be deceived. Schill's analysis of the features common to Russian and Nazi regimes seems very largely to apply also to religious cults. Even grandiose ideas about power and belief in hostile conspiratorial forces are all there. The Maharishi sent transcendental meditation teams out to countries undergoing strife in order to create a calming influence on the atmosphere. Est established a hunger project to end world starvation. At the other end of the spectrum, the Hare Krishna group has collected together an arsenal for self-defense. Part of Moon's operation is the manufacture of rifles and ammunition, and Synanon, the cult which started as a social program to aid drug addicts, owns different types of guns and a vast amount of ammunition. The cults don't have to be vast and internationally based to get drunk on power, as the story of a very different cult, the family, shows. And I'll stop it right here, and we'll pick up in the next video. We're in Chapter 8 of The Manipulated Mind.